This is B-Sides Las Vegas. I am the Cavalry. This talk is how to treat your hacker and responsible vulnerability disclosure.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. And it's by the award-winning Monta Elkins. A couple quick announcements that we're going to make. We'd really like to thank our sponsors here at BSides Las Vegas, specifically our Inner Circle sponsors, Critical Stack and ValleyMail. And some of our stellar sponsors, there's just so many, Amazon, BlackBerry, and the NSA, to name a few. So thank you, NSA and Amazon and BlackBerry. Your support is really appreciated. Our talks are going to be streamed live. And as a courtesy to everybody, please silence your cell phones now. So go ahead and set them to silent if you haven't already. If you have any questions, I'll run over with an audience microphone, which I can't find right now, but we might have him Monta go ahead and repeat the question if not. So just to make sure everybody on YouTube can hear you. That's it. I'm going to read a quick bio of Monta now.
Oh.
Monta.
Long A.
Long A.
Yeah.
Or not. It just reloaded. Of course.
It's okay. Nobody's watching.
Nobody's watching.
That's fine.
So Monta Elkins is the hacker-in-chief of Foxguard Solutions, which is an ICS patch information provider, a security researcher and consultant, and U.S. patent grantee. He is considered by many of his friends to be the Chuck Norris of the ICS cybersecurity industry.
Somebody likes it. Okay.
Monta has been a speaker at more security conferences than his enormous ego can remember, including DEF CON, B-Sides, CS3.
Oh, that's in sweet. Skip that one. That's in Stockholm.
GE Digital Energy, ICS JWC, Toshiba ICS. It's so many.
Yeah.
He's also at the SANS ICS Summit and was named Cybersecurity Professional of the Year by EnergySec. In his spare time, Monta creates a totally safe for work Coke for strippers,
Coke and
strippers, electronic projects YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one you have to see.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Yeah. No, it's Coke and strippers. You can search for it. I wouldn't do it at work, but Coke and strippers, Monta. It stands for Diet Coke and wire strippers. So it's electronic stuff. Yeah. But all right. So in any case, thank you. Oh, hang on. Well, afterwards, that was so good. I have 1,000 in cash for you, featuring Nikola Tesla. Right there. All right. Welcome. I'm glad you all are awake this morning. We're going to talk about how to treat your hacker, in quotes, and responsible vulnerability disclosure. So that starts something like this. Hey, somebody just called you up, your company up, and says, there's some security issue where you are. At that point, what would you do if somebody gave you such a notice, such a heads up, right? Are you prepared? Have you thought about that a little bit ahead of time? You don't want to be surprised when that happens. So we're going to look at it a little bit. So, of course, I play in the ICS security space. Super quick intro for people who are new to the area, perhaps. But that's manufacturing, and it's water and wastewater and pharmaceuticals and dams and electric generation and transportation. That's industrial control systems in a super small nutshell. Sometimes when I'm introducing it to new employees at work, I use this book by Rob Lee called SCADA and Me. It's okay, he said I could use it. I remember, it's SCADA and Me. It's a book for children and management. So I recommend it. I was given the talk once at work, and the CEO of the company came by, and I'm like, hey, by the way, you should probably look at this book. It's written for children and management. Anyway, the end of the book is sort of the intro to here. So little Bobby is learning about SCADA systems. He's like, So I heard I have to protect SCADA from hackers. Are all hackers bad? Oh, not exactly, but that's a story for another time. And this is that other time. So I'm also on a bit of a quest to reclaim the term hacker. It sort of had its ups and downs over time. It went from sort of being a good thing to being a bad thing. I think it's coming to be a good thing again. But we have a couple of definitions, just to start. White hat, an individual uses a computer or networking skills to overcome a technical problem, doing something cool. Black hat is a person who uses their abilities to gain unauthorized access, to do something that they are not supposed to do, potentially commit crimes. At the end of the day, this is really the secret of hacking. The real hacker asks themselves, not what is this tool designed to do, but what is it capable of doing, right? That's the difference. Not what did somebody say it's supposed to do, but what can I really do with this tool? And we don't see this term too much anymore, but instead of black hat, cracker sometimes being someone who cracks systems or attacks them. So back into hacking along this theme, what is a tool capable of doing, not what was it designed to do, right? So these are a couple examples of, a cup wasn't designed to catch dust when you're drilling in the drywall over your head, but it does a pretty good job. You ever do this? You will now? Okay. Or the little Post-it. I'm usually putting stuff in the wall. How to open your bottle. That's an important skill here. If you don't have a corkscrew, a hammer, not like this, like this. All right. Not what was it designed to do, what is it capable of doing, right? Skills of a hacker. All right, so what's a vulnerability? Vulnerability is a weakness which can be exploited by unauthorized folks. And then we have exploit, which is a way to take advantage of a vulnerability, right? A little bit of distinguishing. Sometimes people don't distinguish between vulnerability and exploit particularly well. But so an exploit for this gate system might be, oh, look, we have an exploit. We can drive around this thing to the left. Well, you could fix that, right? You can block it. But it really didn't solve the vulnerability because you can also drive around to the right. All right, so that's our intro. Now, back to the thoughts. Somebody called you up and said, there's a problem either if you could be a vendor, and in that case, it might be a problem with something that you created, or you might be any other business and something that you use, bought, set up, or configured has a problem. Your company web server is spilling all your client data out to the internet, right? What do we do with that? So I propose this first rule of thumb, that if somebody calls you and tells you there's something wrong with one of your systems, let's assume that they are the good guy. Now, it's not necessarily true, but let's assume they are the good guy. There are a lot of other things they could do with this information. I'm most concerned about the person who finds this out and they don't tell you about it, right? They're going to keep it. They're going to do something else with it. So if they've discovered this and they notify you in some way, they call you up, right? Start out by giving them the benefit of the doubt that they are the good guy. They're trying to do the right thing. Instead of hiding it, keeping it, using it, abusing it, they want to let you know so you have the opportunity to deal with it. So what good is this notification? Well, if you're a vendor, right, that's kind of obvious. Maybe you will want to create some kind of patch to fix it. There might be some other mitigations that are possible instead of a patch or until a patch can be applied, and you might document those. As another business, a customer, a user of a product or service of some kind, this notification can still help you. Of course, if there's a patch, you can apply it. But if there's not, there's still things you can do if you know the vulnerability exists and you know something about it. So if somebody has documented this fairly well, whether it comes from the vendor or CVE or someplace else, you can take steps to defend yourself against it even without a patch, right? You can add additional firewalls, shut down that service, change the configuration. So that information is valuable of itself, even when a patch isn't available. So we said that we might consider, give them the benefit of the doubt that if somebody lets you know that they are the good guy, right? They might legitimately be able to sell this vulnerability information to somebody, either the information that's lost or the knowledge of the vulnerability itself. And there are open markets to do that, and that's a legal thing to do. As a matter of fact, some companies will pay lots of money depending on how good the vulnerability is. So it could be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. You know, you get a good exploit for an iPhone or really into, you know, Windows 10, that could be, you know, hundreds of thousands, maybe $1 million. So that's one of the alternatives. So remember, if somebody called you up to let you know this, they're bringing you a gift, right? This potentially has market value elsewhere, and they decided not to do that. So who do you think buys these? Who buys vulnerabilities?
Software vendors.
Software vendors. Why would a software vendor buy it? So they could fix it. Yeah. Who else? Hackers. Yeah, because maybe they want to take advantage of it. Yeah. Yeah, maybe intelligence agencies who want to use it. So there are markets. There are different people with different motivations. Occasionally, maybe security companies because they want to know so they can protect their customers. There are various people that might let you know about a vulnerability. In particular, Google, they have Project Zero. I don't know if we have any of those folks around. So if they find a vulnerability, they have a 90-day disclosure policy, so that after they find it, they're going to let the vendor know, and then they will disclose it publicly. So we already discovered what's the value of disclosing it publicly if there is no patch? Well, because there might be other mitigations. There's also some other benefits to that disclosure. Disclosure can be a motivation for a vendor as well. It's like, this is going to become known, right? So we expect you to continue work or begin work on fixing this item. So other people may tell you along the way. You may have, your customers might tell you. The security consultants that you hire might tell you. If you're building some kind of industrial control system plant, you often have an integrator putting all the pieces together. They may discover a vulnerability along the way. You may hire researchers. Also, somebody who has you in their supply chain, they may come to ask you, do you disclose vulnerabilities? Do you post mitigations? Do you have a good process for letting us know if a product we bought from you has some vulnerability and how we could deal with it, right? That's useful information to have. So even outside of your, people may be asking you, what is your vulnerability disclosure policy like? In some places in industry, we have requirements, like in NERC, SIP, Critical Infrastructure Protection. There are requirements too when you add a new cyber asset to do a vulnerability assessment on it, and then to come back and do vulnerability assessments on a regular basis. So I think sometimes companies believe that, well, we've got this product and we will send it out into the universe and we will sell it and nobody will notice, nobody will pay attention. That's not true, right? Some people are required to pay attention. Some people are required to test your product if you're a vendor. So those things get discovered, and they have good reason to be. If you are trying to set up a system to do this, there are a couple of ISO standards that can help you. Believe it or not, there's ISO 30111 and 29.147. The first one is vulnerability handling process. This is your internal, how do we deal with the vulnerability if we're notified, and how do we take care of that? The other one is vulnerability disclosure. How do we notify people about the vulnerability, and what kinds of information do we provide? So those are some good reference documents if you're trying to set this up in your organization. You don't have to entirely make this up from scratch. Using a standard has an additional benefit in that if you can, and there are probably other standards out there. I'm not so concerned which one, but if you pick a standard, then you have sort of one argument in an organization. The argument is, oh, which standard are we going to pick? Because once you pick the standard, now there are a bunch of things that it says to do. And you don't have to have an argument about each one of those things. Your argument was, we picked the standard. Now, you might be able to develop a more comprehensive standard. You might be able to develop one that's more tailored to your organization. The downside of that is then every step you want to take as a security practitioner becomes an argument again, right? You're arguing with management and with finances and that kind of thing. So picking a standard in itself has addition, and it's not just even in vulnerability disclosure, but picking a standard has that benefit of cutting down on the number of arguments you have. I don't have to argue about each step of this thing. We've already picked the standard that we wanted to do. I think industrial control systems are kind of late to this party. A lot of other things like popular commercial operating systems have had a lot of attention in the past because of the maybe not quite accurate stereotype of a hacker in the basement who has access and some free time or curiosity or ability and explores things like Windows, looking for vulnerabilities, and notifies Microsoft or the manufacturer, and they develop a process for dealing with those vulnerabilities. Industrial control systems tended to be rare and expensive, and so they didn't get this scrutiny, the same amount of scrutiny over the past 20 years or so. But now, thanks to lowering prices and things like eBay, right, you can buy old equipment for cheap and start doing testing in your basement again. So industrial control systems are now starting to get more scrutiny that some of the other operating systems, some of the other more commercial, popular type of applications have already gotten. So they're a little late to the party. Maybe there's a little catching up to do because of that. Maybe not quite as mature. All right. So if you get this call, by the way, who in here are electricians? Anybody? Electrical? Okay. Well, so by the way, you're supposed to ground these devices. You run a green wire to ground to keep people from being electrocuted. That's ground. Okay. All right, so things not to do. If you get this call, don't hang up. Don't ignore them. Your vulnerability is not going to go away because you hang up. A matter of fact, ignore them and it will go away. Chances are good they're not the only person that knows about this vulnerability. They're just the only person who has bothered to let you know they know about a vulnerability, right? Other people may have, and particularly more well-funded people probably already know about this vulnerability. So it's definitely not going to go away just because you don't listen to them. It's still there. It still exists. Don't start out by claiming there's no problem. Oh, our product is wonderful. What are you talking about? Our website is great. Our customer lists are safe. Right? Listen, pay a little attention. They're going out of their way. Don't threaten or begin legal action. We'll talk more about that in a second. Don't assume the worst of this caller without any data. Again, just because of that isn't a guarantee that they're benevolent, but it's a pretty good indicator, right? They brought you something. They brought you a gift that they potentially could have sold or used elsewhere. So don't necessarily assume that your system is configured optimally without any data, right? You might have not set it up according to the best practices and so forth. Yeah. Don't claim there's no problem immediately. All right, legal action. All right, so house on the coast in California. Anybody knows whose house this is? Barbara Streisand's. This is her house. And how do we know this? Because back in the day, there was a photographer that had taken pictures all of the California coast, 12,000 coastline photographs, and her house showed up in one of them. And she was concerned about her privacy, and she wanted this taken down. And so she initiated a lawsuit. Here's her lawsuit. So, before she initiated the lawsuit, this picture of her house from the air had been downloaded 6 times, 2 of them by her lawyers. 1 month after she began this legal battle, her house picture had been downloaded 420,000 times because of the publicity associated. I include the picture 3 times here just for reference, okay? So the action, and we give it a name, right? The Barbra Streisand effect, right? How do we know a random house in the middle of California? Because of this lawsuit, right? And that's the Streisand effect. That sometimes performing those actions to try to hide some kind of vulnerability might actually bring it to light. Lawsuits may also have chilling effects. So it might make you, your company, your organization look like the bad guy. Right? We're just going to sue people instead of fix things. Maybe as importantly, or more importantly, researchers might not contact you in the future with vulnerabilities. And you've lost a valuable resource. Right? They might do something else with them. They may not bother. They may sell them. They may keep them. They may hide them. Somebody else can find them and take advantage of them. So just that chilling effect of keeping people from bringing you these gifts, reporting this to you, has some cost. What day is it? All right, so we're a security crowd. What's an O day? Come on, y'all are awake. Y'all laughed. I heard you. Yeah, you've had 0 days since a patch to fix it. What is this? A pony?
There was a speaker request for a pony.
I always ask for a pony.
There you go. This is your pony, sir.
Wow. I don't always get the thank you. That is hilarious. Is this really my pony?
Yes, really your pony. Your very own to take home and love and feed and pick up the food.
That's sweet. Look, I always ask, what else do you need? I'm like, a pony. Sweet.
No, you're not just an InfoSec janitor. You're an InfoSec stable hand. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I like my pony. Actually, I asked my last boss every time, what do you need? A pony. So many times, he brought me a pony. I have a rocking horse about this big at work right now that I put all my conference badges on. But now I have 2 ponies. Oh, sweet. All right, so you've had 0 days. You're just jealous. You don't have a pony. You had 0 days to fix this. A couple of buddies of mine, and we'll touch on them a little later, ran a research project. So DMP3 is a protocol used in industrial control systems. A guy, Adam Crane, was creating an open source version of it. And to test his open source version of this protocol, he created a fuzzer for this protocol. He wanted to make sure his protocol stack didn't have any vulnerabilities. It was project robust. And so he did. And then he got up with another friend, a guy named Chris Sistrunk, who had a large lab of industrial control system equipment. And they got together and they said, I wonder what would happen if we ran this protocol fuzzer on all these devices that are supposed to understand this protocol. Any guesses what happened? Right? It was a bloodbath, right? Tons of equipment had vulnerabilities. Nobody had tested them before. They fell over. They, all kinds of nastiness. They went through the process of notifying vendors, and we'll touch on that a little more in a moment. But at least in one instance, they came across a vendor who said, "We're not going to fix this ever." Right? It's a vulnerability, but we're not going to do anything. This product's too old, whatever. We're not going to do it. So from there comes a term, I think, coined by another friend of mine, Reed, the forever day. So now we have 0 days and forever day. So the forever day is a vulnerability that is never going to get patched in your control system. Probably. Don't get me wrong, O days are a problem, but in a control system, probably a bigger problem is your 100-day, right? The patch has been out there for about 3 months now, and you still haven't done anything about it. So that's probably, if you're really trying to set your focus in a control system, O days are fine. Let's worry about the 100-day, right? And the 300-day, and sometimes the 3,000-day, right? As long as we get a patching cycle started, that helps us deal with our vulnerabilities. Part of working in vulnerability disclosure is kind of understanding perspectives on the people who you're dealing with. And there are always multiple perspectives. This article came out not long ago. Davey says, warning, Google researcher drops Windows 10 0-day security bomb. That was his headline. The story was vaguely a vulnerability that Google had discovered. They had talked to Microsoft about it. They gave them the 90 days. And at the end of 90 days, Microsoft had not had a patch yet. And so it was disclosed. I started talking to Davey on Twitter. And I proposed another perspective on the same story, at least another headline, another summary. The summary could have said, Windows 10 O-Day info released by Google according to responsible disclosure guidelines allows you to consider possible risk and mitigations to the security of your systems now. Oh, that sounds a little different, right? I mean, it's about the same thing, but it's a different perspective. The perspective that letting you know about a vulnerability gives you the opportunity, perhaps, to mitigate some of the risk, right? There is an upside. That's why we do this thing, right? If there were no upside, you call us all jerks, we all go home, right? But now you have the possibility. You might shut the service down, or maybe you can change the config, or change the firewall rule, or maybe move to another vendor, whatever it is. But if you know about the vulnerability, you have some possibilities. I asked him about this. He's like, well, that was his headline, and that's fine. And he said I could use this with permission. So just from a kind of perspective, right? Was it really an Windows 10 0-day security bomb, or was it advanced notification? Just different perspectives. All right, so you work at a company somewhere, perhaps. What do you do? We talked about a lot of things not to do. What can we do? Make it easy for people to contact you, right? Have like security@yourdomain.com. It can be hard to find the right people to contact. All right, who usually gets this call? Who's the most exposed people in a company? Tech support, maybe customer support, sometimes sales, right? So they're the most likely ones to get the call because they're easiest to find. They're the easiest to locate. But unless you've talked to them, unless you've trained them, unless you've sort of set the system up, they don't know what to do with it. They're like, hackers, we don't want to talk to you, right? And there, you just took this gift and you threw it away. All right, so make it easy to contact. Abuse, publish a phone number, Oh, we don't publish phone numbers. Look, right? You know the people finder apps. Everybody's phone number is available. Perhaps include a secure way to contact you. You know, you could. I mean, it's fine for them to send the vulnerability in plain text across SMTP, but you know, you could do it across PGP or GPG. So if you want to, include some secure communication method. Say thank you. They brought you a gift. At least at this point, right? They brought you a gift. So say thank you. Hey, well, you know, let's figure this thing out. What can we do about it? Exchange your contact information. Get them in touch with the right people or the right team in the organization. It's probably not tech support, and it's probably not, you know, sales, right? It might be a QA team or a security team or a bug fixing team or a product owner, whatever the right person is. Identify that person and be willing, be prepared to set up that communication. Acknowledge the bug and let that individual know that you are working on it or not, or what your time frame might be. Because we're working toward a kind of coordinated disclosure. We want this to work out well. Supposedly they give you a little notice ahead of time, and you can release a patch when they release information about this vulnerability. Don't go dark on them. You might be working yourself, you know, day and night to fix this thing, but if you don't let the person who lets you know that you're doing that, they may think that you blew them off, right? Then they get upset. They're ready to publish it. They're not hearing from you. You're not doing anything about it. I'll just let this vulnerability. I'll publish it early. So give them some notification about what your expected time frame may be. It tends to keep them in the loop and keep them a little happier. If you're nice to them, you might be able to ask them to test your fix, right? You reconfigured your website that was spilling all your company data, and you say, hey, can you look at this now? Is it better? Because unfortunately, sometimes we've seen patches come out that don't fix the problem, right? Then you look bad. It's like, oh, thank you, bye. You go and work on it for 3 months. It's like, we got the fix, and it didn't work. The guy comes back, no, that wasn't it, right? So the analyst, whoever discovered it, if you're nice to them, they might test it for you for free. Maybe not, but you know, right? So be nice, stay in contact. They might help you along the way. You're trying to work for coordinated disclosure. Again, that kind of that trade-off. They're going to give you some time to try to patch it, but they're going to make it known anyway because there's value in that. Other people can defend themselves if they know that. They might test your patches. You end up with a win-win in these cases. Look, if you're looking at a product and you're trying to decide maybe between a couple of different vendors, and you see one vendor has patches and vulnerability disclosures for their product, and another vendor has nothing. Does that sway your decision any on which vendor you would purchase from? Which one do you purchase from? But this guy has 0 vulnerability disclosures. 0. And you buy from this guy? Why would you do that? Because everybody has vulnerabilities, right? That's saying something about the maturity of their program in handling vulnerabilities. They will acknowledge them, they'll patch them, they will let you know, right? We have no vulnerabilities? Right. Don't believe it. Oh, that's for my Miami talk. So, what do some of these people want when they contact you? Some people just want to make the world a better place, frankly. They work in the space, they have customers, or they like electric power, you know, they want it to stay on. Sometimes all they want is to make the world a better place. Help them. Often they probably want some recognition, right? When you release your vulnerability disclosure, you can say, discovered by so-and-so or such and such company, right? That's a little bit of the trade-off. They brought you a gift, they gave you something, they were working to find valuable information for you without pay. The minimum that you could do is, and it's fairly cheap, is to give some recognition for their work. it might build their reputation as a security researcher and so forth. Just try to give them an easy time. They brought this thing to you, right? Try to make their life easy. I know a security researcher he's a really great guy. He does a lot of this work, and he posted on Twitter sometime last year. He was just ready to like pour gas on it and drop a match. They've been fighting to find the right vendor and to let them know, and he can't find him. He's getting fed up, with it, trying to do the right thing. So if you have the opportunity, give them an easy time. All right, so here are some quotes from some other researchers. By the way, I didn't know there were information security restrooms, but there are, just so you know. This is Chris Sistrunk. He says, in favor of responsible disclosure, vendors should act and keep communications open. We had some vendors that went dark. A few gave cease and desist orders to his partner, Adam Crane, but not him. Adam Crane, the guy doing the protocol stack, he got more problem from vendors. I think because he thinks at least because he was more of an industry outsider, some kind of threats of legal action and so forth. There were also vendors, he mentions OSIsoft, that thanked us, attributed us, and asked if we'd test their fix. They were such a joy to work with, right? And I don't think that they're a bad company because they've listed a vulnerability and a fix for it, right? I think they have a mature security program because of that. And I know some of those guys, they do really care about their security. Anybody remember the Kaminsky bug? Right, DNS. So Dan has this, I was asking him, right, he was trying to coordinate one of the biggest sort of responsible disclosures probably in history of tons of companies and internet service providers to fix this DNS bug. You can look up the Kaminsky bug if you don't know about it. His advice was, if you are a researcher or a company, just don't be a jerk, right? Try to be nice, try to be reasonable, try to be responsible, try to listen to folks. He even created this flow chart, which y'all can read all of, and memorize. We have a quiz after the. I will point out this one thing. His flow chart's a little older, but it says, if you go through all the right stuff and notifying them, the company should be okay, right? This should all work out because it's 2012 and everyone has a security team now. So I just want to remind you all, it's 2012 and all the security stuff is worked out. Other people do bug bounties. They will pay you if you will let them know about vulnerabilities, which can make a lot of sense. Why do you do this? Sometimes it's financial. It might be cheaper to run bug bounties. You might not be ready to run your own team to do these things. Lots of people do it. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, a bunch of the U.S. Department of Defense. ICS cert and US cert. Not only do they publish, right? They publish vulnerabilities. And if you're in the ICS space, you should probably subscribe to the ICS certs vulnerability newsletter or news mailing list. You'll get a handful of these a week, different vulnerabilities for ICS equipment. But they can also be your ally if you are trying to disclose a vulnerability. They can maintain your anonymity if you want to, if you're afraid of the company or for some reason you don't want to be exposed. They will maintain that for you. They will help you contact companies. They do this on a regular basis. So they generally know the right people to talk to, and they generally know the right voice to do this in. So they are your friend if you want in this place, in this space. So a little more thought about perspective, right? I'm a big believer in understanding other people's perspectives. Now, it doesn't mean I agree with their perspectives, but it's useful to know them. So if you are a security researcher and you're discovered some vulnerability and you're trying to talk to a vendor, some of the things that may be going through their head is, aren't all hackers evil? Or I don't understand this, you have to be evil, right? You were talking about something wrong with my system, you must be evil. All right, if you might be approaching them with a gift of hard effort. Are you trying to harass me? I'll look bad if I mitigate and acknowledge a bug and work to fix it. Or maybe they just have no way to deal with it. They don't have any kind of system to deal with a bug or to prioritize it. They have work to get done, right? They don't know what to do, so they're sort of caught flat-footed. Maybe if we ignore you or sue you, you'll go away. All right? Again, don't necessarily agree with that, but it helps to understand what they might be thinking when you're trying to negotiate or you're trying to talk to somebody. Or do you have any idea how many installations we're going to have to fix or how many different pieces of software we're going to have to test? Sometimes they're thinking, we have to make a profit. We have to make money. We have to be able to pay our employees. And we do that by creating new products, writing new software, not by patching old stuff. At some point, that's a legitimate concern, right? Sometimes software might be 15, 20, 30 years old, and it's going to be a forever day. You notified them. They're not going to fix it, and that's legitimate. But at least, think about their perspective if you're talking to them. The amount to test changes, right? We do some of that at FoxGuard, test patches coming out for like a whole wall of sample HMIs. A new patch comes out, we test it against all these machines. You imagine all the different kinds of configurations and machines and industries that their product is in, and they need to test that patch, test that change before they roll it out, right? That can be an immense thing for them to think about. So, give them a moment to process that. We're really busy. Everybody's really busy. Them too, right? You're busy. They're busy. I like these. Are you kidding? Our customers don't want patches. Right? Who laughed? Why don't they want patches? What? They break things. It's a pain to install. You're going to shut my assembly line down? This thing's supposed to be running 24/7, right? Some of our customers would pay us not to patch this because then they have to install them. Again, I don't necessarily agree with them, but I understand that perspective. They might also have the perspective of, thank you very much. We're going to get right on this. All right? But those are things to consider, their points of view when you come in this. Remember, too, if you are doing the reporting, you can be respectful. Realize that patching can take some time. Even if they want to and they work on it, it can be a big process. Ask for recognition. That seems a reasonable ask. See if they have a bug bounty program. Be willing to coordinate disclosure with them, right? If you're really trying to make the world a better place, notification is great. Letting people know about vulnerabilities is a good thing. But coordinated disclosure can be better. Perhaps offer to test the patches. Consider talking to CERT if you need to. All right. I have one small related tip, by the way, just a personal rant of mine. Firmware is software. There's nothing magic about firmware. All right. So if somebody says, oh, this is firmware, we don't have to fix that. Well, they're full of crap. Right? Oh, you say, well, firmware can't be written to, right? It's read only. Well, in the best case, that means if there's a vulnerability, it will always be there. And second of all, that's a lie. Any equipment you've bought in the last 5 or 10 years, it's programmable. Just take my word for it. It's programmable. So don't believe that because it's firm. Or another one is I was asked to evaluate a security vendor one time for my company. I went to a conference. I'm talking to them, tell me about the features. It's an appliance, and we do a lot of patching work. And I'm like, oh well, how do you patch this? They're like, we're running security enhanced Linux on this appliance. We don't have to patch it. I'm like, what? I'm like, look, I like security enhanced Linux. It's a great product. It's a great tool. I'm a Linux bigot. I'm in, but you still have to patch it. Right? So then the problem becomes, how do you say, thank you very much, I'm busy at the moment. All right, so that's us talking about vulnerability disclosure. Hopefully you get some perspective, whether you're a researcher, whether you're going to notify companies, or if you are working in a company or business that might get this call one of these days, hopefully you will get the call. Somebody will let you know and not keep that from you or keep it private. And so I have suggested to Mr. Lee, a friend of mine, that this should be his next book, Hackers in Me by Rob Lee and Monta. Instead, he did like Threat Intelligence in Me. Whatever. All right, this is How to Treat Your Hacker and Responsible Vulnerability Disclosure. If you want, hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Monta Elkins. We can have a discussion. Oh, we've got, what, a couple more minutes? 5 more minutes? 7 more minutes. So if you want, I am interested this year. So we did a real brief discussion of sort of a very simplistic definition of vulnerability. But if you'd like to talk about what a vulnerability really might, the real definition might be, hit me up on Twitter and we'll start that discussion. I really want to explore it a little more, right? We go through things like, are default passwords a vulnerability? Are protocols like Modbus that have no inherent security, are they vulnerabilities, right? At some point, we didn't consider some of those things vulnerabilities. At some point, as time goes on, we start to consider them vulnerabilities. So, what really is a vulnerability? I think that would be a useful discussion. Other than that, email, Twitter, thank you all very much.
Give it up for Monte.
Yeah. Any other questions? You got another minute, or it's time to shut down?
We got a couple minutes. Any questions? Just raise your hand. I'll bring the mic to you.
I was thinking if there were none, that was the perfect talk because I answered them all ahead of time.
Nah, you already answered this, but I missed it. What are those ISO standards that slide? I'd like to take a picture of that.
All right. Oh, that's an easy one. I like easy questions. There you go.
Thank you.
And that's actually the summary flow chart from one of those documents that sort of describe what they both do. I think I can quote that part without violating their copyright for educational purposes. Just like all those pictures of Barbara Streisand's house.
Good morning, Monta. Monta.
Monte,
Monte.
but I'll answer. I'm easy.
Yeah, a long time listener, first time caller. So I don't know if you're familiar with the story, and I think the gentleman's name is Sam Bound. He's a teacher up at San Francisco City College.
I don't know the story, but I do know him. He spoke like right before me my first year at DEF CON.
Oh,
This
so
was
anyway,
years ago.
He basically did a disclosure because he found a hospital when it merged, acquired another hospital, and FTP server became forgotten, and records were being stolen off there. And he basically got vilified in the press because the hospital didn't say, "Oh, thank you." They said, "Oh, this cybersecurity teacher is showing his students how to hack our hospital." So I guess how do you protect yourself against the repercussions of a knucklehead system?
So yeah. By the way, I just met him briefly at DEF CON like 10 years ago, but he seemed like a great guy. I think I saw one of his talks. Funny, he just happened to know. So I'm sorry that happened. I think you have to make the call yourself, but that's where something like a CERT can anonymize you. They can be your friend, and they will not release your information if you make that agreement with the CERT team. So they can get it to the right people, and you will not be specifically identified. Yeah.
Any other questions? Awesome. Give it up for Monte again.
Oh, thank you all. And look, I got a pony.